All right. Aloha. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. I have Christopher McMahon here. I met Chris back in probably 2014 originally in Salinas, California, when we were completing our GMB apprenticeship program as the first GMB trainers to go through that program. Um, and yeah, that was the first time we met. And I think Chris came from a background of working in big corporate type of gyms and kind of got sick of that scene. And I believe that's part of his business now is getting people healthy and pain free and losing weight without spending hours in the gym. Is that pretty close, Chris?
Oh man, you can do my job for me. Yeah, that was killer. You're awesome hype.
Right on, right on.
But yeah,
Yeah,
man, that's me. That's me. That's what I do. I mean, yeah, it's so funny. I think back to like the first time I met you. That was like it feels like a lifetime ago. It's crazy. It's crazy how fast time goes. Like, you know?
yeah, it is, man. Well, and so just to kind of catch people up, yeah, that's our connection. There's a funny, I feel like part of the reason why I wanted to do like get into this kind of podcasting is because I know a lot of cool people and I remember things. So one thing that I was going to tell you that I remember from meeting you back in 2014 that still like I still think about daily is tummy time, which I believe is something that you got from the original strength guys. Is that correct?
Yeah,
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 so
yeah.
I really and you turned me on to them, and those guys have been really cool. I like their vibe, how they're kind of into. I think they do a good job at just practicing moving and working on the vestibular system and making moving like a lifestyle rather than like exercise, which is something that I'm constantly always thinking about myself as far as like it's funny because I go to the gym still like right now and I have a funny relationship with it. And sometimes I feel crazy talking about it, but then when I talk to you or other people, they're like, yeah, I totally get it. Because the gym is such a weird place of like, what the heck are we doing? And most of it's inundated with, bodybuilding and whatnot. But anyways, so I still remember the tummy time. And I'm gonna let you talk here in a second, but that was big for me because that's right after I first started surfing. And one of the reasons I'm living in Hawaii now is so that I could surf regularly. And when I first started surfing, laying prone on a board was really painful for my back. So it was, and I came from I think you also used the functional movement screen as well in your career as I did. So that pain and extension was something that kind of led me down a path of figuring like I really want to do this surfing, but it hurts. So how do I get better? And anyways, the tummy time kind of tied into part of it was just spending more time in the position and getting more comfortable breathing, etc. But anyway, man, that's what I remember. So
Ah, that's
yeah,
so that's
yeah,
so
dude.
cool to hear. You know,
Yeah,
you hang out with other people and you talk about things, and sometimes you're like, you talk, and it's kind of like what you said with like going to the gym and stuff. You'll talk with someone who does not work like in health and fitness, and they'll look at you like you have 10 heads. They're like,
yeah.
why do that? So like when I'm able to share something that I'm learning, because at the time that was like new stuff for me, when I'm able to share it and it like resonates with someone else, that's huge, because that's why I started doing this sort of thing. It was to be able to help other people. But what's bigger for me is the fact that you stuck with it. You know, the fact that like it opened a door and you approach the thing about me is like you're able to approach stuff with the beginner's mindset. And that's like so important for anything you're doing, really. You
Yeah,
know, it's like you move to Hawaii and it's like that's a whole different world. I
whole
mean,
different.
everyone's the same people, just different world.
Yeah.
And to have a beginner's mindset with even a new environment that you're in, like
Where?
leaving the ego at the door, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, absolutely. And where are you? You're East Coast. Are you
Yeah,
in New
yeah.
York?
I was in New York. My wife and I, we lived in New York for a little under a decade, and now we live in New Jersey. you know.
Okay.
So
Okay.
out of the city, in the suburbs,
Okay.
raising a baby, got
Yeah.
a
So you got a
dog.
baby. You have a baby now. Oh
Yeah,
man, that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
How old?
Yeah. He's 10 months old. So we did a lot of tummy time. It was really cool actually, because when we're talking about like tummy time, and it's just it's basically like the foundational patterns we have for developing our developmental system. That's all it
Sure.
is. It's
Sure. As
and
far as you're talking
watching,
about like rolling and crawling,
yeah, rolling, rocking,
standing.
crawling, standing, falling on your butt, standing up, falling on your butt,
Yes.
standing up. Like it's all a part of it, and it's really cool watching it in real time. Because look, you guys, whoever's listening to this, you can go and you can type it into YouTube, and you'll see the people from Original Strength do things. You'll see grown men, grown women doing these things, and you're like, that looks weird. But when you watch a baby do it, you're like, oh yeah, that makes complete and total sense. Like, of course they're going to do that. Of course they're going to rock before they get to like half kneeling and do all this stuff, because like you have to develop the pattern in your mind to be able to do it. You have to build that neural pathway in your brain to be like, cool. Yeah, totally. Just like learning how to speak. It's like right now, all he can say are like different sounds, you know,
Right.
but we kind of
Right.
figured out what he's trying to say, you know?
That's cool. Well, shoot, I have some questions I wanted to ask you about that actually, as something that I think about as I'm still a single man and having more friends, having kids and stuff like that. I've come to believe that I think men, we can struggle with purpose quite a bit. In my kind of my opinion, and this is not my original thinking, but something that makes sense to me, is that with women, they have a biological rite of passage, and when they go through puberty and they have their period, they've stepped into womanhood. And some other different sources have said that as men, we don't really become men until we have to take care of others. So I wonder,
Hmm.
I'm curious, have you found a new sense of purpose in your life now that you have
Ooh,
a child?
that's really big. That's really, really big. Of course. Yes, of course. Like I couldn't sit here and say, I had it all figured out. I still don't have it figured out. Like
Yeah, there's no
the world,
manual.
there's no manual, no nothing. I mean, I can't speak for my wife, but I do know that like the same feeling happened for her. So like
Mm,
it's different. You bring a life into this world and you're staring at this tiny thing and you're like, "Oh, for the next 18 plus years, like you're my responsibility." Like here I am still figuring out my stuff. I have all my demons, all my things that I'm working through, and no longer are they mine.
right.
They're yours. And when you enter into a relationship, or when you enter into a marriage, there's this whole idea of, okay, when I find that other person or that other half, a lot of people say, you complete me. You're the part of me. I say, no, that's not true. No other being can complete you. You are your own entity. You have your
Hmm.
own stuff that you have to work on.
Hmm.
And when you can work through the hard stuff, that's when you're open to all these different opportunities. But here you are with this tiny human, and that is the thing for me. The tiny human, the little person who kind of looks like you, kind of looks like your partner, is like they're your reason for putting that stuff on the shelf, or to be able to fog up the glass, wipe it off, and look and see what's actually staring back at you. That's what it is. It's not really a sense of purpose,
Mm,
because we all have purpose. It may not be
mm,
clear to you,
mm,
but a human, that can't be your purpose. That's putting an unfair burden on them. Like think about it.
mm,
Think about, like, you
mm,
you you therefore, for them, when they're adult, they'll be like, "Oh wow, I have to do everything the right way. Otherwise my father's life has no meaning." Right? If
mm,
we want to look at it that way, that's what it really becomes. But what it is it's like, okay, no, I need to figure my stuff out so I can be present for every moment with this other being.
right.
I want to figure it out, because what happens is we kind of swim around in like this negativity. We swim around in whatever, I keep saying demons, but it's like we have these things that kind of are just chilling there. In the book, the the 4 Agreements, they talk about it. If you've ever read the book, it's a fantastic book. It's
I
really,
haven't
really
yet, but
okay.
I believe one of the agreements is to be impeccable with your words or something like
That's
that.
the
Is
first
that right?
agreement. Be impeccable. Be impeccable with your word. Don't let other words bother you. Don't let other things bother you. Um, always do your best. Like all of these things. But the idea here is like the thoughts or things or words that we hear from other people, they're poison. We take them in, we take them
Right.
to be true, and then we poison ourselves with it. So
Mm,
it's not nice, but it's an easier way to look at it this way. Like if we're filling ourselves with poison, probably going to pass it to other people, right? So same thing with a kid. It's like if I have this way of looking at the world and it's clouded with all this negativity and stuff, that's what you pass on. So like this idea of purpose, I don't really think the kid gives you
interesting.
purpose,
Okay.
right? But what it gives you is like, oh, okay, here is a direct reflection. Like I see in this kid, like it's funny because he'll look at me and I'll be like, oh my God, that's what I looked like when I was doing that thing when I was a kid. Like that's the weird thing. You like you see these hints of you. Like he does something and he looks and reminds me so much of my wife. Or he'll laugh at something and my wife will be like, oh my God, he looks just like you. You know, it's this weird thing. So then it becomes a responsibility to be like, okay, well, here are all the things that I've learned. I want to share them with you so that you can be adjusted. Like a great example is like we give our son, he's 10 months old. We let him play by himself. We let him sit in his crib by himself. Like if he's not crying or anything, we let him chill. We won't go rush and get him
Mm,
because we want to teach him now that it's okay to be by yourself. It's okay to just be. It's
mm,
okay to have feelings. And in real time, we're watching our parents who have a completely different way of parenting be like, oh, no, don't cry. Big boys don't cry. Don't do that. And it's just like,
mm.
no, boys cry. I cry on the
Right.
reg. I'm completely normal for it, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a bunch of BS to be like, you can't have feelings. So
Mm.
that's from that big question. There were some bigger things that I brought up, but yeah, I think I just think it depends on how you're looking at things.
Okay. That's a good, I guess maybe a better question would be, which is obvious at this point, would be you kind of chimed in on it, would be a sense of responsibility, that you have to step up to that because like you said, you're responsible for this human for 18 plus years. I mean, for forever really, but
Yeah.
definitely through the period of being a child. Um,
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting because when it's a child, we're able to say, I'm super responsible for this relationship. But any relationship we have is truly one sided.
mm,
Like all relationships are one sided because the actions you take, however, the person is reacting to your decision, it's actually a reflection of how they are feeling. So it's
mm,
not, you know what I mean? It's not like you can't write their story. Yes, he's my son, but he's going to have things going on that I don't understand because unless he shares them with me. So same thing. It's like the relationship with my wife, the relationship I have with friends, old and new. It's like those are a reflection of how I am treating myself. If I'm
mhm,
negative with myself, then those relationships will be negative.
mm.
What we focus on is what our reality becomes. So like we can't look at it in a way where responsibility just stops. Like it because we're only responsible for ourselves. If you want to look at it, it sounds very self-centered when you say it that way, but it's true. It all starts with us. Our us, I, me, the greater being, whatever we are. Like that's
Mm.
really where it all starts.
Okay, this is interesting. So I like this wavelength of of what you were just saying. So this is something that I think is interesting about trainers and the ability, as trainers, we typically get to spend a lot of time with people and you get to know them very well. And something that I really believe in is working with individuals. So it's really hard for me um, to decide exactly who it is I'm working with, because ultimately you're always working with an individual. But I guess what I'm saying is how so you've gotten into like specifically identifying yourself as a mindset coach, which I think is really cool. When did you decide to take on that title? And because everything you're
Yeah.
speaking of has to do with mindset, and I tend to agree a lot with you. But how do
Yeah, man.
you yeah how do you work on that with your clients?
Yeah. So it really started from this place of I would do a lot of nutrition coaching with people.
Mm,
Training stuff, like training mindset stuff is in there, but the nutrition stuff, it's less about like I never count macros with people. I never have people weigh their food. I don't like that stuff because it can
yep.
make people feel less than, right?
Hmm.
But this idea of like the term now I guess folks use is like intuitive eating. Like you feel this
Mm,
way, you eat this thing. But at the same time, we want to refine it back a little bit more and look at the psychological side of it. Like, why am I making that decision? Why is that happening? What happens if we sit with that feeling? Does it go away? So slowly you're peeling back the layers and it becomes mindset work. And then what you find is if you take that mindset work of, okay, the choices you're making are based off these values that you have in your life. Okay, that makes more sense. The way I like to coach my clients is like, okay, what would 2.0 version of Derik do? 2.0,
hmm.
like you got the latest operating system, you have everything there for you. Are you going to treat yourself as if you're the Dell computer from 1995? Or are you going to treat yourself like you're the newest version of like whatever Mac product is out there? Or are you going to understand that your computer, the thing that you are right now, is always updating? You're always able to change. So therefore, like if you stick with the vehicle that you have, but understand that you're open for the upgrades, you'll always be ahead of the latest MacBook that someone else has or the other MacBook that you're looking at and you're jealous of. And you'll always be ahead of the Dell from 1995 because you are the Dell from 1995, but you have to understand that you have to make shape and space for the upgrades. You have to literally disconnect from the past. You can't, when you connect to a past thought, you're living in the past. So you can't
Mm,
open yourself up for the future, whatever's coming, whatever
mm.
update is coming out next. Because if you don't open yourself up for the update that's coming, you're always going to be Mr. Paperclip. For those of you who like
What
have
is
Mr.
that?
Paperclip on your computer, Mr.
What's that?
Paperclip, like on the old Windows computer, was this animated paperclip that would pop up in
Oh
the corner and
yeah.
be like, hey, use this thing, right? So like you're always going to be that dude. You're never going to open yourself up to be like the newest thing that's coming out, which unfortunately is what a lot of us do. We don't open ourselves up to that. And it's crazy because coaching nutrition is how I just came to that. Like it was a natural progression of things. And also for me in my own journey, like I've been in therapy. I've suffered from depression and anxiety most of my life,
Mm,
addiction, like it's all there. So like the self-help work, like the woo-woo stuff, it's literally saved my life
mm,
and has taken me from being like super dependent on alcohol to get through those hard feelings, super
mm.
dependent on antidepressants to be able to function and get out of bed, to where now I don't depend on any of those things. And I
Nice.
wish I could say it happened overnight,
Hmm.
but it didn't. It took a lot of making like learning mistakes. Like all mistakes are learning. That's what it is. It's just learning. And it's the ability to say like, no, 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 I need help. Whether that be in fitness, nutrition, mindset, whatever the demon is, you have to look it in the eye and
Mm,
understand that it's there for the ride. Like it's there. Like I would never change or trade any of those moments because they brought me to this right now. And when you can understand that, okay, this right now, this is where I'm supposed to be because of X, because of Y. Like it's truly empowering. And that's what I do a lot with my clients, even if it's nutrition work, even if it's training. Like it's understanding like, okay, we're in the half kneeling position right now to do a single arm press. Why are you here right now? Well, I want to be really strong. No, actually, why are you here? We do this thing called the 5 whys. I do it with all my clients. Like something
Okay.
they talk a lot about in precision nutrition. It's a
Mm.
lot from psychology and from
Yeah.
might be
What are the
somewhere in
five
motivational
whys?
interviewing. Five whys is literally you ask yourself why 5 times. You say
Oh.
out loud whatever your goal is. You say it. And the thing is for most folks is like they'll be like, I want to lose 25 pounds. And then it will stop. So it's literally like, cool, you want to lose 25 pounds. That's what we call an outcome-based goal. So you have this outcome-based goal and you say, I want to lose 25 pounds. It's great. What happens when you lose the 25 pounds? I don't know. That's why I don't like the term goals, because you
Okay.
goals and values are what is it? Like goals change and values remain. Like if we work from a place of values, we can figure it out, but we often don't know how to define what our value is. So if we do
Ooh.
the 5 whys, it goes, okay, I want to lose 25 pounds. I want to lose 25 pounds. Why? I want to lose 25 pounds so I can fit my jeans. Cool. Why? I want to lose 25 pounds to fit my jeans because I blank. Why? And you keep working it. And what you'll eventually find is your answer is like, when I was 22, I was in the best shape of my life. I felt good about everything. I never regretted decisions I made. Now I regret a lot of choices I make on a day-to-day basis. So your
Mm.
value is I want to be confident. I want to be balanced.
I see.
I want to know why I'm making my choices. So then that's where Chris 2.0 would be. Chris 2.0 lives in a life of value where there's confidence. So you can say, okay, is this decision I'm making, the decision to be in this half kneeling position, pressing the bell over my head, even though it's uncomfortable, would Chris 2.0, would Chris 1 year from today, would Chris on February 25th of 2022 be pressing this bell and complaining about it? Or would he be doing it because he knows it opens him up to longevity, to living pain-free, to being
Mm.
able to pick up his son without shoulder aches and things like that? Oh, okay, yeah. So he would totally be confident in that decision, right? You see how
Mm.
that works just from asking yourself a question 5 times?
No, that's good. I had probably came across that in the precision nutrition stuff a while ago, but that's brilliant because what you're saying is like any goal that we originally have, you can bring it to a value um, by asking yourself why 5 times. That's pretty cool. And I was going to ask you a little bit what's your process of setting goals and whatnot, because for me as a trainer, as a coach, I have to have my clients have to have a goal. Like if there's no goal, then like I'm like, I don't know what we're doing. And we've all had those clients where they're like, they'll pay you and they're down, but it's a weird territory for me. I'm like, it becomes weird because I'm like, you either have to be willing to do every single thing that I tell you to do, which I think is really weird, um, or I just can't work with you. But um, so
Yeah, I mean, in those moments, yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Okay, so I was gonna say something about the intuitive eating. So I tend to everything you said, I'm like, yep, I nod my head in agreement with that. But I've realized that a natural kind of ebb and flow of things for myself is I go in and out of measuring things and tracking things closely. Like right now, I'm going through another bout of like heart rate training where I'm using a heart rate monitor a lot to do cardiac output. Um, so I'm monitoring that very closely, and I've never tracked calories. I've never tracked macros. I don't plan to start, but I've had many clients who they have needed to do that, almost just like it's just as an awareness piece, because I think that's the flaw in the intuitive approach is you probably have to have a certain framework or a certain amount of discipline at first before you can go intuitive.
I
So
love
I'm
it.
just wondering, like, how do you deal with that? Are
Yeah.
you are people aware of that? Um, and yeah, how do you find that line of
Yeah.
encouraging them to that, and then
Yes.
maybe bringing them towards more structure when it's needed, or
I love it. So the big thing there with measuring, I've worked with people
And by the
who
way, sorry,
are
I
yeah.
gotta say, something that's important that I think is really important is that you're a type 1 diabetic. So you're
Yes.
intimately familiar with paying attention to what the hell goes in your body. So
Y-
anyway, I just
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah,
that
no, that
you
totally
have
plays in.
I
That
love your
totally
perspective. So yeah.
Yeah, that totally plays into it. So I've worked with a large variety of people. I've worked with, the weekend warrior. I've worked with the person who's recovering from disordered eating. So I've
Mm,
run the gamut of things. And the
mhm,
reason I like this idea of intuitive eating or eating from a place of value is it's much easier to forgive yourself.
mm,
It's much easier to forgive yourself because for most of us, when we look at I will say there's a time and a place for everything. The heart rate
yeah,
is a great example.
yeah,
I ran an ultra marathon last year. I had to wear my heart rate monitor for pretty much all of my training leading up to it because I needed to make sure I was in a specific zone. I
right.
needed that zone reminder
I'm
so that I
guessing
wasn't, because
I was gonna say
zone two
guessing,
for pretty much
yeah,
every.
yeah, yeah. So you
Like,
weren't crossing your anaerobic threshold and just burning yourself out. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Right. So because for me, with the amount of training volume I was doing, it was like 12-mile run, nothing. Like at that
wow,
point, because it's like, you're training for up to I was running like 32 miles for a race. So like there would be, but that
dang,
built up over time
that's
where you
crazy.
can understand what your body's doing, right? Like you'd probably know at this point when your heart's around like 115 beats per minute if you've been wearing your heart rate monitor this whole time. And what happens is you can loosen up the reins at a certain point, but you have to also look at it like you are an athlete for whatever level you are. Like I'll say you're an athlete. I'll say I'm an athlete too. I'll say anyone's an athlete who puts in the time and the work for whatever they're doing. So our ability to track our macros and do all these things, it's a little different. And also, you can totally, you could put yourself in a calorie deficit, you'll lose the weight because that's what most
Hmm.
people want. They want to lose the weight. But
Right,
what happens when that calorie deficit ends?
right,
And that's where this idea of like intuitive eating, understanding why you're making the choices you're making, forgiving yourself for making certain decisions and understanding that it's a part of the process, that's where it comes in. Because the idea of diet, the idea of super restrictive eating, because that's
right.
what that's for the average Joe, that's what it becomes. It becomes restrictive eating. Like like Derik, if I was to have you count your macros, it'd be like, hey man, you want to stay at about like 2,400 calories for the day. Make sure you're getting this percentage, this percentage. You'd probably be like, cool, I'll do it. Like, but for someone else, they'd be like, why do I have to do this? Like, I don't want to do this. And then they do it and they do it. And then the messages I used to get from people were, I really slipped up. I had, I had the burger, I had the cake, I had a couple beers. Like, I feel so bad about myself. Like, that's literally what happens. Like, how many times have you had clients who have been doing super well and then they come in and they tell you, like, oh, I just feel, oh, like, I don't get it. I don't know. What's the point? Like, that's what you'll get.
Yeah,
But with this style of working from a place of value and understanding, like, okay, cool. Like, balance your plate. Like, that's the big one. Like, everyone does this one. Like, balance your plate. This is a foundational skill. Balance your plate. Balanced plate for me 50% fruits and vegetables, 25% carb, 25% protein, thumb length of fat. Precision nutrition, like 101. Like, if you have that on your plate, you're heading in the right direction. And then you wait in between your meals. You try not to snack.
hmm,
Just try. But I'm hungry. Okay, cool. Sit with that feeling for a second. Is it actually hunger? Is it another emotion? Oh, well, it was like anxiety. Okay, well, why are you anxious? Well, because I had this. Suddenly, we're able to work backwards. Where if I was to be like, all right, you have to stick on this super restrictive, like count your macros, know exactly where everything is. Like, if I said that to someone who was already stressed and anxious, imagine the level of anxiety they would have from that. Now, once we get to a place where the client's like, I feel really good. I've lost the weight and I've been able to keep it off. But I want to add like 5 pounds of muscle now. Like I've lost the weight, but I want to put on some muscle. Then I'd be like, okay, cool. Well, maybe we should then look at your macros.
Hmm.
Because then I could tell them to eat. I could tell them to eat more, but they might eat too much. And then it's like, you understand? So it's like, I like to look at the foundation is like understanding why you make the choices you're making and become aware, which it basically forces you to be present. It's like mindful eating. It's like meditative eating. That's really what it is. You're
Hmm.
aware of why you're making the decisions you're making. And then there are tons of schools of thought where it's like you could be extreme. You can be like ice cream all the time. Do it. Don't feel bad about yourself, right? That's one version of intuitive eating. If I was to really deep dive into it, that's what it could be. There are extreme people just like that. Look, I'm a vegan. There are people who are vegan and they're like, okay, I'm going to eat 3 pints of vegan ice cream because it's fine. I'm cool. You're still eating 3 pints of like ice cream. It's just a different kind of ice cream. It's still ice cream. It's not the best choice to do that because you're not going to feel great after. It's the same idea here. Like I could be like, eat whatever you want, whenever you want. You can do that. And I do say it like to my client, I never restrict them. But I'm like, but
Hmm.
here, make sure you just stick with the balanced plate thing and you'll probably feel better because
Hmm.
that's the big idea. The big idea is to feel better. It's not to feel like, I don't know. So I hope that answers your question. It's kind of like where I was coming from with
No,
that.
it's good. It's great. I was gonna say, yeah, there's a lot to that. Um, what it sounds like I was hearing is that a big tenet of the intuitive eating is to be graceful when you make mistakes, which I think is great. And I think my approach is slightly different where I'm always looking for specific things to measure, and then I guess rationalizing why we are hitting the mark or we're not hitting the mark, and then not being critical if we're not, and just reinforcing when we're doing the right thing and being like, is this I guess to put it this way to make it more specific is like restrictive eating works in the context of fat loss and weight loss, like it works. But like you said, if they're really feeling restricted, then you get into a weird territory where it's probably not going to be a sustainable thing. So I try to, like you said it already. You said that there's a time and place for everything. So for me, it's funny to navigate that because there's a streak in me that I love objective, binary, black and white stuff as much as possible. But then you realize that we're always dealing with humans. So I try to figure out what people are willing to objectify and if it fits
Totally.
into their values. Because like I'll say with women, you said, women recovering from like eating disorders. I've had some of those clients in my past, and also had women who have like weight cycled a lot. And so they maybe have a low body weight or something like that, but they could be what is, for lack of a better term, skinny fat. And so once you add strength training into their program, the weight on the scale might actually go up, even though their body composition is decreasing. Um, so the scale is not necessarily the best thing to use for a measurement in that context, but it might be things more subjective of how they're feeling. Like you said, like
Hmm.
I guess I like to have my little slogan is to look well, feel well, and move well. And with each one of those things, I think you can have an objective component and a subjective component, or I would like to believe so. That's kind of my attempt. But like feeling well is a really interesting one because that's highly subjective. I'm like, I don't really know how we objectify that, or like how we measure happiness, for
Yeah.
example.
It's,
But
it's such a good, it's so interesting, Derek. I love that you're bringing this up because, you know, first, I'd like to say, surprisingly, actually, some of the EDs or disordered eating I've dealt with clients have been from men, you know,
Mm.
so it runs the gamut.
In
It's
what
not just,
ways? In what ways? What kind of patterns?
yeah,
What are you seeing?
yeah.
Curious.
So, binge eating, emotional eating,
Yeah.
uh, restrictive eating,
Yeah.
focusing on specific compositional goals, but therefore like overeating to try and hit the goal. Like literally, like, look, if your body type is built like mine, I'm never going to be a 210-pound like guy. I'm just
Mm.
literally, the most I've ever been able to get to is like 170, and I felt disgusting at all times. And that was from forcing myself to eat like 3,000 calories, 4,000 calories. Like it's just how
Totally.
my body works, you know? And in working with gentlemen who are dealing with that too, it's the same idea. It's this idea of like, okay, what do we do here? Like,
Mm.
where do we go next? You know, so it doesn't really, and I believe this week, whenever this podcast, right now, I think it's eating disorder like week, where people are sharing their stories and all this stuff. And
Oh, really?
look, dysmorphia, yeah, body dysmorphia, eating disorder, disordered eating, all those things, like they exist between any person. Any person can have it, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And going based off how you feel, it requires you to be in alignment, in perfect alignment, to understand with what signals your body is giving you.
Mm.
And oftentimes wrapped in is this elephant in the room of depression and less than.
Mm.
And a great way to know if what you're doing is working is if that little chatter in the back of your head, if it's hanging around or if it's backing off. Because what you're eating affects that guy too, affects that thing, that depression and anxiety. If we're fueling our body in a way that's in balance, that depression will ease.
Mm-hmm.
If we are fueling our body in a way that allows our gut microbiome to be in alignment, those feelings will dissipate. You know, it's funny, but it's true. I mean, so yeah, man, I went from being like a meat eater, eating as much as I possibly could, to coming back from a long trip to Italy with my wife, where I pretty much ate steak, yeah, pretty much steak every single meal, like delicious food every single meal, to the point where I felt like gluttonous because, you know, we're traveling through Italy and stuff. And I came home and we went to our local butcher and I got all this food and I was eating it. And I was listening to this podcast and this guy was talking about like being able to hunt and kill what he was actually eating. And that's how he decided he was going to
Okay.
eat meat. And I was like, I looked at my dog and I was like, I can never do that. So I stopped eating meat and I was
Interesting.
vegetarian. So I was eating, you know, it was just like from a moral place. I was eating fish because I have before killed a fish and fished and ate it. And I was like, I'm cool with it. And then slowly but surely fish
I
stopped
love
tasting
this
good to
topic.
me.
Okay.
Fish stopped tasting good to me. And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to kind of stop. And then slowly but surely, while I was doing this, for me, my depression and stuff started to like decrease. So it was like this weird thing. And then I started to do a lot of research, everything with my diabetes, because I also was suffering from super high cholesterol, like to the
Mm.
point where they wanted to put me on a statin drug. Here I am, like 28 years old. Like, what? No. My blood sugar, like, was good. Could have been better. Like, I had a good A1C and everything, but I would have it this way. I would have some food. I'd have a protein rich diet like they told me to do. They told me basically to eat like high protein, low carb, like try and do all these things. And my blood sugar would like skyrocket. I was like, I don't understand. I'm one of the most fit people who ever stepped into a diabetic office. Like they would tell me, they would literally tell me, the doctor would be like, if I looked at you and I looked at your blood work, I would never know you had diabetes. That's what they would say to me. And then they'd be like, but you would have this, or your cholesterol's all out of whack. And I found these folks mastering diabetes, and their whole thing is like they're basically like a low fat, vegan, whole food based diet. And I was like, you know what? I'm already vegetarian. Let me just try like the green light foods that they have written in here. Let me try cooking this way, see if it's enjoyable. Because my wife, she's not going to enjoy it if we're not having meat and stuff. Like that was really the idea here. And I started doing that, and my cholesterol the next time I went for my work went from like 300 down to 110. My A1C went from being 6.5 down to 5.6, which is literally would read, if someone read that, I register as a non-diabetic, even though I'm still type 1 diabetic. My ability to perform in the gym and everything skyrocketed. I was able to run an ultra marathon, do all this stuff, recover in between sessions. Now I'm at the point where I do a lot of strength training and everything. And I'm still eating this plant whole food based diet. For me, that also came along with my level of depression and anxiety just dropping. And I don't know if it was also in conjunction with, like, I was in therapy, I was meditating, I was in the middle of doing my yoga 200-hour cert. Like I was doing all this stuff, but also stuff that I'd done in the past. And like there was this brain fog, or there would be these days where I couldn't get out of bed. I just felt less than, even while I was on like Zoloft, I was like still feeling, it's on like the max dosage of this thing, and I still felt like garbage. And the more research I found, like for me, that works. For another person, you could put them on the exact same diet or eating style that I'm doing, and their depression would go through the roof. Like, so it's completely subjective to each person, each body type. And that's why I like this idea of like intuitive eating, or understanding why you're making the choices you're making. Because if we can go back to like the feeling that we're having, and not having like, because it can go down this route of like, all right, you ate an entire cake, you're happy for 5 seconds, but then later you feel like trash. So it's like like actually being able to follow the feeling and see where the feeling is coming from. And that's a long-winded way of saying like why I choose to work this way. One, as a diabetic, two, also as like a general human being, and having been through this like addiction and depression, it's like, oh wow, those things, like if I can get rid of the brain fog that allows me to create the space for the feeling to exist, I then can go and function throughout the day. I then can go sit in a therapy session and actually articulate what I'm feeling, as opposed to being just numb and being told like that. That's at least that's my experience. You know, everyone's going to have a different experience, just like everyone's going to find a different nutritional thing. But I think for most people, like a whole foods based diet, meat or no meat, you know, that's probably gonna help you out in some regard, and also help the planet in some regard too.
Ooh, yeah. I was gonna ask you. I had that on my list. I was gonna ask you how long you've been doing the vegan plan now, and also about how popular the carnivore diet is right now. And that's a lot of stuff I've been kind of going down that rabbit hole, and I've been tending to eat more like that, and mainly because I have a local source of beef. Like the cows are right down the road from where I live, and I know the butcher.
Yeah,
And
man.
I've found, because like this is a big thing for me, is I'm like, what makes you feel, I think food is very complicated, especially when you just start to barely understand, as I do, the gut microbiome, and how everybody's going to be different depending on where you were raised, on the foods, antibiotic consumption. Like there's many factors there. So I'm like, what we can essentially get nutrients from is different. And I found that I feel really, really good eating like red meat and beef. But so yeah, I just want to throw that out there, and just
I
see
think
your take,
that's
because
super interesting.
it's really interesting right now, because there's some different concepts about like the glyphosate and the anti-nutrients that are in some of the plant products,
Yeah.
and
So I'm at,
nothing's really equal. Like you really ultimate, and
no.
that's why I always say, I'm like, this is one of the things that I find interesting about nutrition and any dietitians that I know, is ultimately when you're figuring out what you should eat, the best method is elimination, and you
Yeah.
take things out and then you reintroduce them like one at a time, and you see how you respond. because you can do all the blood tests, as I've done blood tests and stuff like that, but ultimately, like, it comes to like a subjective thing. And what you said about like brain fog is really important. And that's, man, I encourage people, I'm like, whatever makes you think more clearly or be more at peace in your mind, you should do more of that, as long as it's not
Yeah.
harming somebody else. Like, it's probably the
Yeah.
right thing to do. And that
I'll
is that
say,
kind
I'll,
of intuitive thing. But anyway, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, man. First of all, I'll say this, like, if you can sleep, like if you could sleep through the night, then what you're eating probably is working for you.
Yeah.
If you don't get a solid night's sleep, or you think you're sleeping and you
Yep.
wake up and you feel like trash, what you're eating is probably not working for you.
I
But as
love
far as the
that.
carnivore diet goes, it's like the same idea here. It's like, I'll say it this way. Like if you're eating
Mm.
if you're eating farmed, like conglomerate farmed plants,
Factory
conglomerate
farm,
raised,
anything.
factory farmed anything, you're
Yeah.
destroying your body.
Yeah.
And you're destroying the planet. It's
Yeah.
like, it's literally like scientifically
Yeah.
proven. You're
Yeah.
destroying the planet. We
Yeah.
only have 60 harvests left, according to the UN. 60 harvests left. So look, I'm not going to sit here and say
That's
like,
crazy.
I'm not
What
going to
does that
sit here
mean?
and
What does
say
that mean?
people
60 harvests, like, of,
harvest left of the soil left. That's
oh,
actually harvestable.
based on
That's 60 years.
the current farmland.
Yeah,
Wow.
because what's happening is the animals that are getting farm just like destroyed from being fed like poop and
Yeah.
cornmeal and
Yeah.
remnants of other cows that have died on there. They're dying on that land, and then they're shocking that land with pesticides and everything, which is basically destroying the nutrients that's within the ground. And that's getting and that's releasing crap into the ozone layer that's destroying the ozone, right? It's this whole cycle. So it's,
Right.
you have the
It's not,
extreme.
we're not doing true farming and like a
No,
system.
no, 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 not at all.
Yeah.
And it's just destroying. That's really what it is. And so as far as the carnivore diet goes, I'm all for it. People do it. Do it if you want to do it. I would never look at someone who's eating meat and say, you're a bad human. Like, how dare you? You're
Yeah.
destroying the planet. I would never say that, because farming and eating meat, it all goes hand in hand. It's just, you have to do it in a sustainable way, in a way that's regenerative for the planet.
Right.
You know, I'm reading this
Generally, yeah.
this book called The Pegan Diet by Dr. Mark Hyman. It's an awesome book. Basically, it blends the idea of paleo and veganism together in a
Cool.
way that is focused on regenerating everything in the planet. But this whole idea of the carnivore diet saying that like plants are bad for you. No, it's like if you're eating like, corporate farmed horrible things, then yeah, of course they're bad for you. But that's like me saying all meat is bad for you. That's not true either.
Right.
If I'm eating a wild raised elk and it's eating off the land where the other elk have naturally died and passed away, and they're eating the plants, well, those plants that are all the nutrients that we're actually after, they're showing up on people's blood work and everything. Those biomarkers are showing up. So they're also eating plant-rich things. And it's just, that's the way it's supposed to be. So if the carnivore diet's working, do it. But I think it's irresponsible to put up your nose at other people and say, no, you're wrong. Again, it's
Right.
like it's the camp of the ultra vegans who are like, you're a horrible human being for eating
Right.
an animal.
Right.
No, I'm going to be honest. You wouldn't be here now. If humans didn't eat animals, we wouldn't have existed. So I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. I am going to say, though, because of the way we've developed and the lifestyle of our grandparents, parents before them, the choices that our parents made, the way we were raised, like, not all people can eat meat. Just not all people, like, literally, just they can't. Their bodies don't respond well to it. And I was one of those people. My body, as type 1 diabetic, just it cannot handle the protein levels. It just can't.
Is that a common thing with type 1 diabetics?
High cholesterol is a super common thing. Heart disease, super common. Stroke, Alzheimer's, they're all related together. And a lot of it is with inflammation and insulin resistance.
Yeah.
So insulin resistance goes up because meat does technically, it inflames you a little bit. But for a diabetic who already is dealing with insulin resistance, it's like it's not a great combination. Now, that is not to say like have someone go on this vegan low fat diet, have them try that lifestyle for like a year, get everything where it needs to be, and then reintroduce meat if you want to. But do it in a way where you're having grass fed, like locally
Yeah.
sourced meat in moderation.
Yeah.
That's really what it is, moderation. You can't go from eating like a double cheeseburger twice a day and just go back to that. No, you have to ease it back in, and you have to do it in a way where like you're still eating that whole food plant-based diet, and just add some meat in there, and
Mm.
your body will thank you for it, you know?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating, man. Especially, yeah, going back to kind of that hunting perspective, because I think about that all the time. I'm like, man, I've never been hunting, but I would like to. I would like to be, because I guess I think one of the arguments that it's definitely emotional, but it makes sense to me from like vegans who are more on the extreme side is saying they don't want to kill animals. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Or like the fact that so many people don't participate in kind of the food that they eat, and we can just go to the grocery store and buy like dead animals. Like, I don't necessarily think you have to eat you don't have to be a hunter to like fully appreciate it, just as you don't have to be a farmer, farming vegetables or whatever to fully appreciate them. But it is an interesting perspective I think about a lot, as just wanting to be closer to the source, um, closer to the process. But
Yeah, you got to know where it's coming from. That's the thing.
I'm
You
yeah,
got to know.
I feel really lucky for that. What did you eat today so far?
Today, I mean, I've probably had about like 300 or 400 grams of carbs at this point. Just because I eat whole foods like things. So this morning I had like a cup of oatmeal,
Yeah.
2 bananas, an apple, a mango, a
Ooh.
teaspoon of peanut butter, flaxseed,
You
chia
mix that all
seed,
together?
um, walnut milk, all mixed up in a giant bowl. That's what I
Yeah.
call my fuel. It fuels
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
keeps me going. And then I don't snack really. I just don't. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Even on days when I'm training harder, I'll just have more at my meals. That's really the way I work. Um, my lunch was about a cup of quinoa with some black beans, some pasta sauce, some tomato sauce, sauteed with some garlic, mushrooms, peppers, spinach, topped off with a little side of hummus, some cherry tomatoes, and like had probably like 6 bottles of this water. And then for dinner, who knows? We might do Brinner. I might make some pancakes,
Ooh.
some buckwheat pancakes,
Ooh, yum.
for banana pancakes. Yeah. So I mean, I eat a lot,
Yeah.
and the carb thing is usually what trips people up. Like, you're diabetic and you eat so much. Like, nah, my blood sugar's fine all day. Like, it's just the way we're designed. Our bodies are designed to handle it because it's not processed.
That's
It's just
cool.
not.
That's really interesting. I know it's funny because I think I gravitate towards the carnivore diet. I've kind of noticed a cycle with myself that I'll tend to go low carbohydrate, I should say, which kind of gets me out of a funk, for lack of a better word. And then I'll get more active, and like the more active I am, the more I can tolerate carbohydrates. So that's also a very interesting thing to me. Just a little nugget. I'm not trying to hang my hat on anything, but being able to tolerate large amounts of carbohydrates, I think, is a sign of being really healthy, um,
Yeah. It's really
as
funny
well.
because you have folks who are like 300 or 400 pounds who go to this I guess it's vegan at this point, but just a whole foods diet, and they're eating a ton of stuff. Like, they're eating so much, but no longer are they eating like the processed things.
Right. They're eating
No longer
things
are they
that
have
provide nutrients.
Yeah. So it's like they're eating like, yeah, they're eating like 400 or 500 grams of carbs in a day, but they're also losing all this weight and feeling better. And all their biomarkers are going back to where they're supposed to be. So it's this like interesting thing. It's like, and then if they were to add strength training on top of that,
Right.
or endurance-based activities on top of that, and cardiac output on top of that, then it's like, oh, okay. At least 30 minutes of moving your body a day plus that combination, like do anybody good.
Cool. Well, Chris, tell me, you were saying that you have like some mindset sessions coming up, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where can
So
people find out about those?
yeah, so folks can follow me on Instagram. I'm at coach.chrismchmahon. I'm very active on there. I'm on there pretty much every day. But what I'm doing, because I love to do it, I have been asked so many times. I lead a small group coaching program every 3 months that folks go through. They're in the middle of it right now, called Project Aligned and Alive, and it's mindset, training, and nutrition, and it's this whole program, and everyone loves it and gets so much out of it. And I get asked all the time, like, what is mindset? Like, I don't understand. Like, what are people doing? Like, I hear this word a lot. And so the thing I'm doing now is I want to teach as many people as I can to get the most out of their life by focusing on what's truly important in their life. And that can
That's
be pretty
great.
overwhelming. It's pretty overwhelming sometimes. And what I call this, I call a value-driven lifestyle. That's what it is. If you are living a truly value-driven lifestyle, you are able to pull yourself out of the shit when you are in it. So as opposed to feeling like you have no way out, nothing feels right, and feeling that way for weeks, months, years, it suddenly becomes like an hour, 20 minutes. Like that is truly what happens. And it's what my clients see. So value driven lifestyle, I am every Friday doing 60-minute free group coaching calls, live coaching for anyone who tunes in. They ask their questions and get coached. That's what it is. And there's
Are
no
you doing that
gimmicks. I'm
on your
not selling
Facebook
anything.
page?
Facebook page has it up. Instagram has it up. The
Okay.
way people can get in is you can literally reserve your spot on the Facebook page, or they can just DM me and say the word value, and I will exchange with them the info to get all set up. But anyone
Cool.
can join at any point. And it's really just, I love coaching. It fills me up so much. It's quite selfish. I just love doing it and
Yeah.
helping others because it makes me feel like whole. It really does. And that's why I'm doing this. So it's every Friday, 60 minutes. Yeah.
Well, perfect. Chris, man, so good to connect with you and talk with you again after so long, man. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we're gonna have to chop it up again soon. And I'll see you later from Hawaii, my man. I
Oh,
gotta roll.
all right.
Have a good day, brother. Catch you.
All right. You too, man.
All right.